for declaration of interest.
Convener, we have apologies from Councillor Nelson to be substituted by Councillor Daisley. We'll move to roll call.
Declaration of interest.
Declaration of interest.
I should have notified this. I apologise for not notifying in advance. I am a council appointed board member of Inchgreen Marine. What's the name, Chris? Marine Park Limited joint venture. Bit of a mouthful. So there are items relevant to that role in the agenda. So I'll declare an interest or a connection, but I don't feel I need to leave the meeting.
Are there any other declarations of interest? We'll do those first.
Thank you, Michael. With respect to similar to Councillor McCabe, council appointed director of Inchgreen Marine Park Limited, and also Riverside Homes and Riverside Inverclyde, which are coming out with a variety of things throughout the agenda today. With respect to agenda item number 19, and also later on in the report as well. And again, I'll make a specific connection at the appropriate paper.
As a similar connection, item 7, Riverside Boards, but I wouldn't leave the room.
Okay.
And for me, Riverside and White as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. So welcome to this meeting of Environment Council's Environment Regeneration. This meeting is being held remotely and also in person, and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcasts available through the Council's website. The Council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act of 2018. The broadcasting the Council meetings to fulfil a public task obligation to enable members of the public to avail the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with Council published policies available through the Council's website. Members of the Council are reminded they should follow the Council's established meetings protocols, including allowing the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. Okay, so onto the agenda. So item number 2 is the Environment Regeneration Revenue Budget as at objective of June 2023. Matt.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, as you say, this is the regular revenue monitor report. It is the first one of the new cycle, so it does highlight last year's outturn at 1.3, where the committee outturned at £770,000 underspend. 1.4 highlights the current projection. At the moment, we're projecting £351,000 overspend. The details of that are in the report. I wouldn't go through a lot of the details on that at the moment, although I'm happy to take questions later on. What I would say is that we were in a similar sort of position last year, and it obviously improved. So I would expect this position to improve as the year goes on. But I would caution members in that a large part of this overspend, around about £240,000 of it, is tied in with the situation with the parking at the moment, where we're not recovering. We haven't recovered the income post-COVID. Now, clearly, we would hope the committee goes back into a break even by the end of the year, but that's not sustainable going forward with that sort of pressure. So that has been put forward as a pressure under the budget process, and will be looked at under there. The report also asked to agree environment. This is just to tidy up some historical overs and unders within the waste side, and that's included in the appendices. Other than that, we'll just ask to note the outturns at the moment. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, Mark, that's all right. Any questions for Mark? No? Can we agree a recommendation?
Right.
Okay, thank you. Item number 3 is the Environment Regeneration Capital Programme 23 to 26, the Progress Report. Mark, you ready? Mark, you want to go for?
I think I'll be myself, Convener. That's okay.
Okay.
I won't go through every project, but I'll just highlight whether there's some issues for noting and perhaps some new project allocations. On the cremator replacement project, the works are progressing. However, there's a need to renew the existing flat roof covering for the existing building, as noted in the report. And the most economical way of addressing that is through the existing contractor currently on site. The committee is requested to note the allocation from the core property funding to allow that work to progress within the same overall site programme for the current project. On the Greenock Town Hall roofing project, there's an indication of programme provided in the update, and we expect to be in a position to provide a more detailed update to the next committee, including a pre-tender estimate for the phased works. On the Waterfront Leisure Complex life cycle works, the update advises committee of the projected over expenditure on the recently completed fire and panic alarm and emergency lighting replacement project, and that's connected with the difficulties of carrying out significant major elemental replacement in an operational facility of this type. And it also asks the committee to note the requirement for a further allocation of poor quality funding to address the replacement of the chiller equipment at the facility. On the seawalls and retaining walls item, the update highlights the recommendations from the survey of the new Arctic Kelburn walkway and the associated coastal protection measures, which will require remedial works in the medium term and a consideration in terms of future capital funding pressures. There's also an allocation of funding noted for essential external fabric works to Lynn Hill Golf Club. That's all I would like to highlight just now, but obviously myself and other officers are here who can answer any specific questions on individual projects. I'd ask you, committee, to approve recommendations. Happy to answer questions.
Okay, any questions, Stephen?
Yeah, just a couple of questions there, convener. First one's on the Windhill Golf Club, paragraph 326. It would be useful to get an understanding of the reason that we need to look at spending £140,000 on the golf club. Obviously, we've spent some money internally in the golf club, so it'd be useful to give a bit more detail. And the second question is in paragraph 3.39, Kilmacombe Car Park. Just ask if there's an indicative timescale for this design work being completed and reported back to committee.
Yep, through you, convener. I'll take the first one and maybe ask Stephen to answer the second one. In terms of Windhill Golf Club, we have spent money recently prior to this on new windows, doors and some internal alterations, but that only took us part of the way, and the external fabric is in pretty poor condition, and that is there's still some water ingress associated with that because we haven't addressed the actual render around the building, and there's a lot of significant rot in the external timber fascias and soffits, etc. So it is work that can't wait. It is essentially required now, and that building was in a kind of category C poor condition and was one of the ones that we're targeting investment into based on the condition survey reports. Stephen, I don't know if you want to address the Kilmacombe.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, convener. The Kilmacombe car park, we're progressing slightly slower due to resources directed to other priorities at the moment, but we hope to get a design back towards the end of the year and present that back to committee for consideration.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, 330 talks about improved design for the battery park to be a cycle route. Will that, I believe this would be agreed to do it, but will we get sight of the design prior to work commencing?
Stephen, do you want to take that one?
Thanks, convener. I don't anticipate you would view the works that we're proposing at the moment. They will be designed to suitable standards, and we'll develop them and bring them forward. But I'm not anticipating you would actually oversee the design at this time.
You can feel oversee is a word that obviously up to legal to decide whether we oversee or not. I would like to see it as a board member. As we go through a process, if we do it offline or when it comes to committee, maybe it's for you to determine.
Sure.
We'll have to share the design so many.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you. In agreement with Councillor Brooks with respect to that, I think it's important we actually see sight of this kind of information, and it's something I was going to touch upon at the active travel paper later on. Just a couple of things, just following on for Councillor McCabe, with respect to the Kilmacombe car park, can officers confirm the location that's now proposed? Previously there's been two, so just what if you're doing detailed design, presumably there's only one. And my main point is on 3.22 seawalls, and a note that officers have identified as cost estimate in excess of £3 million for undertaking the works from New York to Kelburn Walkway, which is presumably to do with the gaping baskets, and that we need to inspect that every 6 to 9 months. I wonder if officers can give us some information and clarity on the legal process here and why we have responsibility for the environment that holds up the A8 and what engagement they're taking with Transport Scotland to try and get this matter clarified and get the liability for this works transferred to Transport Scotland.
Stephen?
Thanks, convener. On the car park question, I think I'll need to come back to that, councillor, just to confirm the car parks that we're putting through the design, and I'll come back to you directly with that information.
Convener, I can answer the one on the retaining walls. I think we've actually discussed this item at previous committees. I think we've made statements around how far we've managed to progress in terms of identifying the legal ownership position of all the land connected to the kind of boardwalk and the walkway. There are multiple titles involved. It is not a straightforward position. There is definitely a need to engage with Transport Scotland. That has not happened yet. And now that we have this report that highlights the condition of the existing coastal defences, it's something that we absolutely need to clarify and try and put beyond doubt, which is very difficult in terms of legal terms. But we'll be working on that over the next period, and including engagement with Transport Scotland to make them aware of the the significant work potentially required in this area.
Just come back.
Okay.
Yeah. I think thank you for that. I think it's very important. It's something I've been raising at committee because I was aware that this could come up as being a big liability on us, and it's important we do this. I don't see how we've ended up with this situation where we're responsible for maintaining the environment, but we did. Even if it is legally the case, morally it should really be Transport Scotland's liability, and we should do all we can to make sure that they take it on.
Well,
yeah, thanks. Just to point out, I don't think we did a roll call, or did I miss it? Just process. Sorry. Look, in case it's important, I don't know.
We'll do it before the next agenda.
So I've just got a question about 3.35, 3.37, 3.38. So it's just about the traffic surveys that have been going on. It's just a typo in 3.35. I think that should say 3.37, not 3.14. It's just, I'm conscious that some of these are dragging on. So we're talking about 3+ years. We've been looking at Cornguy, we've been looking at Blackfield, Broadfield Junction, and the update is always we're progressing, but there's been no end date. I think the last committee asked for some sort of target date. So my concern is just drifting. So if we could have some sort of target dates for some of those traffic surveys, that would be good. Thanks.
Stephen?
Thanks, convener. The traffic survey itself, the Inverclyde traffic survey, is a large body of work. It's quite an extensive programme of works where consultants carrying out for us. We don't have an end date. It is ongoing at the moment. What we'll do is I'll contact the consultant and see if we've got any. We'll see the progress we're at and try and give an indication when we can start to look for this report to be returned to us.
Just on that, so 3.38 is the Larkfield Road, George Road Junction. So I think we've already done the consultation, and we're actually the traffic survey. We're now at consultation, so it was meant to go to a public consultation prior to lockdown. Obviously, that was the ideal time to do it. So that one, I believe, has already been done. It's really just the public consultation we're waiting on. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for that. John.
That's fine. Thank you, convener. It's just couple of questions on 3.22, it's the seawalls, and it's just to find out what progress has been made in the mapping of the council seawall assets. I do understand that this is a very, very complex and it could be under multiple ownerships, but it's just to find out what progress has been made. And also, is there any other obligation on Inverclyde Council in respect of other landowners who may have land adjacent to the river, or does that come under the authority of what do you call it, Clyde Port Operations Limited, who are the harbour authority? The next question really relates to, and I think it's probably too early for this report, but there's safety fence at the new cycle route at Mirren Shore. I know that this was a very recent request and probably too recent to be included in this paper. Would I be correct in assuming that this will be addressed in a future paper? That's all, thank you.
Yeah, I think we can be in terms of the mapping of the assets. I have to say that it is not been a priority because we have limited resources. You know, we are working on the remainder of the capital programme, and this area is something that we have limited officer resource to focus on. So that is the position that we find ourselves in. We have looked at the areas where we know there is an ownership for the council, and there are a few other areas that we're looking to survey in the near future. But again, in discussions with legal colleagues, trying to establish ownership 100% of the whole coastline is an extremely challenging proposition. So we are having to kind of prioritise on an area by area basis as time and resources allow, unfortunately. I don't think I can answer the specific question on about liabilities beyond our areas of responsibility. That's maybe one. I don't know if Stuart might have any knowledge of that. What was the last? Can you remind me what the last question was, Councillor?
Yes, the last question was the cycle route at Mirren Shore, and there was no fencing around that. I understand that fencing will be constructed in that area, but since it was such a very, very recent request, I would be working on the assumption that was why it's not included in this paper and maybe included in a future paper.
If that was the kind of request that came direct to us from yourself, Councillor, that is something that's actively being pursued just now, and it is in progress. It might not be physically on site, but it's imminent. And I don't think if I'm talking about something that's different from the other inquiry, you can let me know. But if it is that item, it's not of a significant scale that we would necessarily include it in the capital report. But we'll certainly inform you when the work has been complete.
That's fine, Eddie. Quite happy with that response. Thank you.
Convener, Eddie has some comment on Councillor Crowther's question regarding liabilities with reports. Councillor Crowther, as you well know, the complexity of titles, I can't give you a simple answer on that because of the complexity. As my colleagues have already highlighted, the AA boardwalk is very, very complex. So I couldn't give you a one-size-fits-all answer to that question.
That's fine, thank you.
We were going to ask you, John.
Thanks, mate. It's just the question on one major costs and that is an estimated update on the cost to this comment replica. Other questions we are living on this dog park. Do we know how much it's going to cost to maintain this park, given the increased pressure on our lake skies? So a large cost, it's not a cost rate myself.
Sorry, I didn't catch that question. Convener, can that be repeated?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I just about, yep.
Yeah, it was just to ask the updated cost on replacing the comment. And the other one was, do we have an estimate how much it's going to cost to maintain this dog park? Thanks.
All right, so in terms of the comment, I mean, there isn't a defined project at the moment. I understand that officers might have taken away actions from the last meeting of the Comet subgroup to try and revisit some of the estimates they had for different proposals. We don't have anything back from that exercise at the moment, as I understand, and that will be fed back to the subgroup as and when. In terms of the dog park, I think that's maybe one that Kenny can perhaps take if he's there.
Yeah, in terms of the dog park, can you hear me? Sorry, in terms of I think I mentioned at the last committee, the level of funding available just wouldn't cover the extent of size the dog park would be required. a significant amount of expenditure, even just for the fencing that would be required, let alone anything else.
Yeah, I was just going to come in the comment. I think as we're all aware that the funding that the council has allocated towards a replacement comet would be insufficient to provide a like for like replacement for the comet. So the comet subgroup is looking at how we commemorate the comet within the funding that's currently available. So there's no going to be any request at this point in time for any extra funding.
Okay, any other questions? No? Any idea recommendation?
Great.
Okay, item number 4, the membership project update. Oh, sorry, yeah, we'll do the roll call.
Sorry.
Thanks, Clara.
And the following councillors please indicate if they're present at the meeting. Councillor Brooks,
Chamber.
Councillor Cassidy,
President Chamber.
Councillor Fogarty,
President Chamber.
Councillor Crowther,
Present remotely.
Councillor Curley,
President Chamber.
Councillor Daisley,
Present remotely.
Councillor Jackson, Councillor McCabe,
President Chamber.
Councillor McCormick,
In chamber?
Councillor Quinn,
Present chamber.
and Councillor Robertson.
Present in the chamber.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Item number 4 is the membership project update report. Aidan.
Right, thanks, convener. The report provides an update on the Inverkip City Deal project. We have deliberately split this report from the outline business case report to reflect that the OBC does not have to be remitted to policy and resources, only the element of this report that seeks approval to allocate funding from the capital programme contingency held by PNR. The background in the report includes the basis of the original strategic business case and estimated costs back in 2015. Also includes the changes to the proposals and updated cost estimates as part of the outline business case in 2023, and the subsequent work by officers to further review the proposals, including the completion of new traffic volume surveys, which forms the basis of the recommendation being presented to the committee today. I'd ask that the committee approve the recommendations, which include the funding proposals outlined in section 5, and myself and any other officers present who contributed to the report are happy to answer any questions.
Paul?
Thank you, Peter. I want to thank officers for bringing this report forward and the work that's been into it. It's certainly something I've been raising with them almost every week now since being elected. I also think we should thank the villagers in Women's Day and the Women's Day Community Council who have campaigned to see this project come forward to help address the long-standing accident problems at the junction at Inverkip. And I think it should also be appropriate as well to thank two of my former predecessors, Councillors Dory and Rebecca, who championed this project alongside local community for a number of years now. I know some say that the village is often forgot about, but in my view that's far from the truth. We've seen significant investment across this council over the last few years, including in our villages. And I remember a lot, and what I get from villagers is thanks for the investments that have been made. And like anyone else elsewhere, they want to see more investment. But the villagers know that it's hard for this council to make that investment with the funding, without funding being cut every year by the Scottish Government. And I think it's important to highlight that this project's only happening because this council sought to include this as part of the City Deal initiative. Because without doing so, nothing would have been done at this junction. Because after all, the Scottish Government agency responsible for the A7 Transport Scotland did not view this junction to be a major accident spot. And let's not forget that it was that same very agency who caused further delays to this project getting off the ground, which withdrawing support at that time was round about the 11th hour. I know villagers need to pass along their thanks to officers who worked with them to try and change Transport Scotland's mind on the roundabout. And while it didn't result in the desired outcome that many hope, I know villagers are appreciative that this council had their back. And I've been involved in campaigning for this project to come forward for many years now, prior to joining this council when I was on the Environment Regeneration Committee Council. It's been a project a long time coming, and I know villagers are incredibly supportive of it. And I don't take decisions this committee for granted, so I hope today that the committee will support the recommendations of this report so we can get on with this project so it will benefit not just Inverkip and Bay, but the whole of Inverclyde.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. James?
Thanks, convener. I've had a lot of feedback from villagers in Inverkip just around the placing of the signalised junctions. So I'm noting in the report that one of the signalised junctions is at the Kip Marina, and the other one is further down at the entrance to Main Street on the A78. A lot of the villagers that I speak to, in fact the majority of them, their main concern is the junction that leads from the A78 onto Sainsbury's, and then the danger element there. And in fact, having done a freedom of information request last year, based upon that feedback, it does seem that it is quite an accident heavy hotspot, and I think that's pretty well known. I would like to just ask officers how they would alleviate any fears of villagers and residents of Inverkip and Weems Bay around the junction at Sainsbury's, given that the first signalised junction is down at Kip Marina. Thanks.
Thanks, James. Sure.
Through you, Convener. Clearly, this junction is in order to facilitate the development at the former Inverkip Power Station site, and the junction geometry has been designed in line with what Transport Scotland Standards Branch have found to be acceptable, Councillor Daisley. The junction which you're talking about isn't within the trunk road, and it's not been the focus of the design that we've looked at. But if there are concerns by villagers at that junction, our colleagues in roads would happily look to see if there are any mitigation measures that can look to improve things.
Great, thanks, Stuart.
Thank you. I think I welcome this. It's I suppose an example where, as a local government, we're taking ownership of an issue that isn't fit within the national criteria of Transport Scotland. We would all like if this was actually going to be Transport Scotland, but they're looking at it listed from a full nation perspective. They do not think the works are sufficient or needed for the current transport network. I must admit, I would really like to see that work being done. But first of all, a couple of things on points, just a clarification. My understanding was that the roundabout solution didn't ever get approval from Transport Scotland because the design wasn't progressed sufficiently. I just wondered if officers could confirm that. And secondly, now that we've actually gone through this process of getting the money organised, etc., what's the timescales? I know I think we covered in the previous report, but I think it's probably a good time now to think what's the timescales for getting this project up and running and getting this much needed improvement to the road network.
Covered in the next report.
Yeah.
Through you, Convener. I do reiterate that this project was not to address the safety issues, it's the enabler for the wider site. And in respect of the roundabout that was proposed at Main Street, as in terms of familiarisation, that was designed by Scottish Powers Consultants, but it was non-compliant from a Transport Scotland perspective because of entry distances to the roundabout and footprint. With regards to the timescales, the next report talks about the early business case and the early business case being submitted. But fundamentally, we can't submit the early business case unless we get approval to this report. But our intention, if there is support by members for the remit going to the Policy and Resources Committee in September, is that we present the outline business case to Cabinet in November, and thereafter it will cascade from there. But we hope that during the course of the calendar year 2024, the majority of the works would be complete. But that is an aspiration at this stage.
Thank you.
Lucas.
Yeah, thanks. I was just going to ask, in terms of the Transport Scotland's role, what have they still to approve, and when are we likely to get approvals, and what role, if any, would they have in the, I suppose, the delivery of the project?
Members of the planning board will recall that the planning commission principle required these junctions to be designed. So the design of the junctions had the approval of Transport Scotland. What we have to do is we have to continue to engage with Transport Scotland in terms of reaching an agreement on us carrying out works in their asset. So that's something which still has to be resolved with Transport Scotland. And probably the largest single activity that we get into their consideration is the roads traffic management during the construction phase of the works, and that again has to be approved by Transport Scotland.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I suppose from my point of view is this has been a very long project. If we actually think of the City Deal projects and our aspirations for the City Deal project, what was a horizon project, what was a sort of relative quick win, which we actually thought perhaps the Inverkip Junction would have been. In all honesty, we were hoping that this would have been done and complete by now, and it's not been. So I think it is. We really do need to approve this paper and the next paper to get on with these in order to get this in place, because we do know for the future of the population in Inverclyde, we really need to unlock the potential of that Inverkip power station site. My specific question is probably on the funding, Stuart. The funding at recommendations, I can understand it at 5.2, I think it was, is telling us the council needs to contribute 14% of the extra funding. I did think that all the funding of it was contained in previous papers. So I wonder if you can maybe say a wee bit about what's happened to make the extra funding come about, if that would be possible.
Sure. In 2014, the funding allocation was identified within the City Deal was it was a 3.77 million budget. But we managed to do some value engineering and also made the case with the City Deal PMO that the follow-on funding would be funded from the follow-on investment from Scottish Government. Clearly, there's been a lot of water that's travelled on the bridge since 2014, and we've had a significant inflation that's taken place since then, particularly since 2021. We have gone through lots of iterations in terms of the design of this. You'll recall, or you can see from the papers, that there's a fundamental shuffle from what we looked at. And you'll also see that at one stage during officers' discussions with the contractor, we're up at £4.8 million. So we've carried out a value engineering exercise, and on that basis, we've managed to get to £3.8 million. But recognising that the City Deal allocation £3.25 million, any further increase in that would require potentially to bring into the extra inclusion taken as well. So we can't rely on the follow-on investment structure. Clearly, the project will have follow-on investment, but because it's not Scottish Power who are carrying out the works, and it's the council who are carrying out the works, we are looking for the £500,000 inflation, and that equates to the council's contribution. If, God forbid, there was any increase in the costs, we would be able to apply for 86% of that increase from the City Deal payment.
Yeah, of course. And can I just reiterate Paul's thing? There's been an awful lot of work done on this over the many, many years. So again, it's just obviously to pass our thanks on to the officers for the amount of work that's been done on this.
Yeah. Okay, can we agree on that condition? Great. Yeah. Okay, item number 5 for Southern Inverkip. It's the outline business committee. Jennifer, what takes that? Yes. I think you're on mute, Jennifer.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that's you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Thanks, convener. This paper is a follow-on from the last, as we just discussed. It seeks approval for the submission of the Inverkip outline business case to the Glasgow City Region, Glasgow City Deal for approval. As detailed in the previous paper, projects for infrastructure improvements on the A78 and at Inverkip, which will facilitate the development of the Inverkip power station, which already has planning permission in principle for a mixed-use development. The outline business case highlights benefits which can be achieved by the investment on the A78 to unlock the power station, which will bring benefits of 650 residential units, retail and commercial industrial floor space, enhancing the green space, enhancing community facilities, and improvements to the green network. The development will also bring jobs to the area through construction and with the uses that locate there. As stated previously, the costs have risen, and Stuart's just went through the changes in the member authority contribution which is required. The Road Services worked hard to value engineer the project to take it to the 3.8 with the 3.25 contribution request from City Deal for funding, and then the additional funding we're seeking from the council. In 4.5 it states that external funding would be used here, but it should state that the funding would be from the RAMP. If approved today, the submission will be made to the Project Management Office ahead of their deadline in September, which will then allow the OBC to be submitted to the Glasgow City Region's Cabinet on the 2nd of November. The next step following approvals of the OBC is to move forward to the final business case, which will see the finalisation of the project, including detailed design and legal requirements with our partners, Scottish Power. And we'll be looking to submit the FBC early in the new year. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, Jennifer, thanks very much. Any questions, Bill?
Yeah, just more than happy to approve the report. But 4.7, we do talk about road services for project management, the delivery of the physical works. And it goes on to obviously identify job takers. These are really busy people. And just to ensure, I'm just to be assured that we have the capacity to do this. I take it TM is going to be outsourced. Will other things be outsourced? Because obviously a major project, we want it to work. We want it to be as minimal a minimal disruption to the travellers. So we have the capacity to manage this ourselves.
Sure.
Question mark.
Three with external support needs.
Okay. We'll look up to it.
Can we review the recommendation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Similar size papers.
Item number 6 is the Town and Valley Centre update report. Stuart, please.
There's three reports about saying which we can update in respect of both the Town and Valley Centres Fund and the place-based funding updated from the private government since 2016. The report highlights the distribution of projects by area, and there are a number of legacy projects which officers will expedite as soon as possible. You'll also note from the report that it's our intention to bring a report for the next cycle of the committee with proposals on larger scale developments given the commitment of multi-year funding from the government going forward.
Yeah, thanks for the report. I know obviously a further report which I assume will have the detail, but it's just a sort of quick question on this. So I'm just trying to understand now we have the town regeneration forums which come up with ideas and sort of priorities for each town that then gets fed into this committee. Well, are there any proposals to change that, or will the regeneration forums continue as we are currently?
That's the decision for this council committee. Clearly, in the past, the residential regeneration forums have been allocated a large part of the funding and the project management of the projects. By bringing it back in-house, it's for officers to deal with the major aspects of the project. And you'll recall that at the last allocation or place-based funding, each residential regeneration forums were allocated £40,000 each. That could be the level of committee that it still continues at that level, or it could be the level of committee that the allocations go higher than that. Because we've got multi-year funding from Scottish Government, or an allocation multi-year funding from Scottish Government, it's also an aspiration that rather than having lots of small and small scale projects, that we look at larger scale projects, and it will be brought for the members of this committee to decide whether also recommendation on those larger scale projects are appropriate or other ones.
Okay.
Welcome.
So in terms of the future, the town centre regeneration will be part of the follow-up report. what that looks like in capacity and their role in those projects will be clear from the next report.
Through you, Chair, yes.
Yeah, I had a question in relation to 3.4, which was just to clarify whether we're talking about £407,000 over 3 years or whether it's £407,000 a year. Probably know the answer to the question, but I think it would be useful to ask the question anyway. But just in respect to Councillor Quinn's point, I mean, I think it's important that I suppose the forum have a view on whether they've got a continuing role to play. And if it was a view of the forum that there's not a particularly meaningful role for the forum to play, then the forum might decide, let's wind the forum up. I'm only a member of the Port Glasgow one, and I think there is certainly an ongoing role for the forum, in my opinion. There are obviously major projects going on in Greenock as well, but I think if we're going to review the roles of the forums and the sort of need for the forums, I think we should maybe ask the forums basically what's their feeling about the role. Do they feel that they are having a meaningful role? We obviously don't have forums in the villages. We only have them in the three principal towns, but that would be my view. But I think that is something that could be considered with a report back to committee.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
So we need to get an answer to that question. Which is a not inconsiderate sum of money. We need to make the most effective use of that money given the constraints on the public finances.
Okay, any other questions? No? Any other conversation? Okay, from 7% to the generation strategy. Martin, you finish for us.
Yes, as we've had an all members briefing on this earlier this afternoon, convener, I don't have anything to add at this stage, but happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Martin.
Well, it was more a comment, I have to say. I did find it very difficult to read the report and the papers and the agenda just because of the colour of it and the font size, etc. I think the presentation that we had brought it a bit more to life to some extent. And I think it would be useful, as Martin's requested, to see that presentation. But there's nothing in here that's rocket science to any great extent. But I do think it does reinforce the need to look at Greenock Town Centre and have a real clear plan as part of, I suppose, a wider regeneration plan, a wider housing plan to address the challenges within the town centre. So, as we discussed in the briefing, I think it is important it feeds through into the local development plan. I think it feeds through into the housing strategy as well, and informs and shapes other plans that we have. But it doesn't necessarily, the actual report here doesn't necessarily grab me to any great extent, I have to say.
Yeah, thanks, convener. I suppose the first thing said, and it has been said, the report is aspirational. The report in itself is not going to fix anything. You know, the report is there to give us a baseline, a strategy to move forward for the Greenock Town Centre, the greater Greenock Town Centre, which, as we've been reminded numerous times, is the regional shopping centre in Inverclyde, the regional centre in Inverclyde. So I welcome the report. I know the report in itself doesn't do anything. It's what comes from the report. I know it's not a magic wand that you wave in front of people and all of a sudden the shops get full up, the houses get better, we get a nice wee canal. I realise that. I think for a first step, it's a good first step and it's something that we should welcome as a council. And I do think from the point of view of Greenock, that's what it is. It's a first step. And we know it's a strategy for the long term. We're going into the future. And it's got to be seen as that. It's got to be seen as not something that lies in a top shelf, but as Stephen says, something that we allow to lead us in different parts of what the council is doing. So thanks, convener.
Sure. We take these comments from both councillors on board, recognising that it is a highly development strategy, and there is an outstanding need that can bring back forward things into action plans, which we are in the process of tendering, and we're hopefully bringing in forward short
Sure, thanks, Barbara.
Thanks, Convener. So one of the main things that came out of the presentation and really kind of follows on from what I've certainly been seeing for a long time is the need for mid-market housing solutions. And I think it was really heartening to hear that being emphasised again this afternoon. And I do hope that that is something that we can realise, because it very much has a gap in our market. Can I just double check on the back of what Stuart's just said there, Convener, that the next step, I'm just trying to tie down a concrete next step in terms of this, that it is the action plans coming back? Is that what we're seeing?
No, Convener, as stated in the all-member briefing, Councillor Robertson, this is housing and the aspiration for housing in our long aspiration when I talk about a 20-year horizon. So it is very, very aspirational. So we've said that from the very beginning of the presentation. So that what this document deals with is housing. So it's looking at land use and how we can work within that. So the town centre action plans are not subject to this, but they will complement what's been presented today.
Can I come back in then? Thanks. So that helps, because that was kind of when those action plans aren't going to be the next step. So can I just double check then? I know that's an aspirational plan, but we need to make an aspirational plan happen. So I'm just wondering what the concrete next step is with this particular aspect.
For your Convener, as previously explained, we've got the next stage in housing terms is a local development fund. So that if you in terms of sorry,
no, I just I don't know that it was previously explained, but that's okay.
Sorry, in the briefing it was previously explained.
Okay, sorry, in the briefing.
So apologies. Our next step for housing will be the local development plan, and that's 2026. So that, whilst that's not a policy document, it's an aspirational document, and will certainly inform the provision within the local development plan.
Okay, let's wait. Well then, Martin, did you want to come on that?
Yes, just a couple of things. Firstly, to pick up on Councillor McCabe's issue with the report, I am happy I could circulate a full colour copy of the report together with the appendices to members. It is available in the members' library as well, if that makes it easier to read. On the kind of next steps from a housing perspective, we'll also be using this report to influence the action plans for the local housing strategy, which we hope will be bringing back to you very shortly.
Okay, thanks, Martin.
Thank you, Convener. I think it's important just to go over the comments about it being aspirational. I think it's important that we have an aspirational plan. I take recognise the fact that it's related to housing regeneration, but obviously looking at housing led regeneration and see what's proposed would be a significant change to the fabric of the Greenwood Town Centre. And I think having these aspirational ideas is important, because we've seen similar ideas with respect to the levelling up funding, 2017, demolition of the old mall, bringing the 78 down to the line level. That was seen as very aspirational. How could we do it? How could we get funding for it? But so having the ideas in place and having things to say, when we get the opportunities, we can go through it and be agile enough to say yes. Can we pursue this idea now? And it is very important to make sure that these ideas are fed into local development plans. So I'm glad officers have confirmed that both in this meeting and previously in the briefing. So on that point about agility, and obviously the local development plan being 2026, how do we feel? I would like to get a comment from officers about whether or not how we can actually go and use this plan or these ideas now to drive through development. And I'm conscious of the fact we have maybe some of the discussions that we've had in the briefing, but I think it's important to do this in public as well. How do you use the terminology I think Martin used? How do we prime the pump? What do we think would be the best way to go about this at this moment?
Martin.
So I think probably there's some discussions to be had. I mean, you'll be aware from the all members briefing there was some discussion on which of these was probably the one you'd take forward first. So I think there's probably a bit of work to be done on actually looking at the priority list and actually targeting the easier of the hits. I mean, some of them are very aspirational, so the Westburn, although I think it looks great, is quite clearly would be a significant undertaking and could be quite a long way down the line. So I think it's maybe a question of getting that into the local housing strategy action plan, also getting it into obviously local development plan, but also maybe having discussions with the relevant landowners to see where we can go and how we can actually start creating a large enough site that it attracts interest, given the issues previously about and the issues raised about the size of sites and that being a constraint on development.
Paul.
Thanks, Michael. Listen, I apologise if I ask any questions about an answer. It's just on this is getting driven, I suppose, with this housing needs and demand assessment. And I can only follow this as I see it. I have never, my time as a councillor, is anybody contacted to say this man was still to get land dead in property. Never in that time. But I have been contacted constantly over the years. I've lost count of the number of people that phone them and say, look, you know, we're in no account of accommodation, I've got a sick relative, I've got a child who's maybe, you know, get autism, whatever, needs a change of housing. I certainly know there's young families out there who can't afford to buy an inventory. You can think of today's paper about the house prices going up. We got a paper last week as well, the Health and Social Care Committee telling us that inventory it's a low wage economy. Now we talk about mid-market here, and I get that it's aspirational, but who's it aimed at? That is my point. This housing needs a development assessment. I'm not sure if this really addresses issues in enterprise housing, but this is what's going to drive the strategy. You talk about mid-market. To me, mid-market would be about between £8,000 to £150,000 for the young people, the young families that try to get on the housing market. You know, you need £20,000 deposit, then you need another £20,000 to go in a mid-more with the cash rich middle classes, which are looking to come into enterprise. So I support any aspiration, but I'm worried that his housing needs development percent, which is driving this, could be wrong, and we could end up with a house that's which doesn't deliver for the people in enterprise. That's just my point.
Martin, you were comment on?
So I suppose there are separate aspects. So one of the things that did come out quite strongly in the local housing strategy consultations was the issue around about lack of modern homes to buy in Inverclyde and mid-market rent. Separately, the condition and quality of the social housing is a separate issue that's also being addressed through the LHS. And what we are looking to do through the LHS is shift the emphasis so that there is the opportunity to bring in Scottish Government funding to improve the quality of housing in Inverclyde and regenerate housing in Inverclyde rather than necessarily being driven entirely by new build, which gives the social landlords issues round about low demand stock and voids. So we've got separate strands, I suppose, on sort of regeneration of existing stock, and this, which is more about a part of the market that isn't really available in Inverclyde, and this is the part of the market that's probably driving people to move to places like Bishopton and is driving outward migration in Inverclyde. So that's the aim of this.
It's just this point about market. I'm sorry for going the same. I'm not going to sort of lot. Mark's talking about families moving on to move to Bishopton. If you can't afford a house in Inverclyde, you can't move to Bishopton. And that's my point here. Regenerating old housing stock, that's not going to become available to anybody who's looking to buy the first family house. So again, you know, who's this aimed at? It's certainly not aimed for the young families, the two people with kids who want to buy the first house on the house market. They've got a budget between, you know, maybe £130,000, then they get their deposit and their dividend money in there as well. So I'm at a loss to see where many of the areas of this strategy who are saying that. To say if you can't afford the house in Inverclyde, you certainly can't afford to move to Bishopton where the houses are going to double price.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like Martin respond to the issue of houses for sale. I think the main discussion we were actually having the briefing was around mid-market for rent. And the example given in the report was of the development of the Gorbals, where basically for £800 a month you get your property and your heating, lighting and all that as part of a package, and it's good quality, affordable housing basically for people who have obviously got a reasonable income. But the reality in Inverclyde when we come to private lets is you could be paying £800 a month easily for not a very good private let. And good quality private lets are significantly more than £800 a month. So it's about a different option that is not available to a lot of people at this point in time because they can't access social rented houses because they don't meet the needs criteria for social rented houses. And the private rented option is not necessarily a good option for them. And as Colin says, they can't afford to buy. There is obviously the issue of how do we build new houses for sale, which are affordable to people, absolutely, and that needs to be part of the wider strategy. The question I was going to ask Martin is specifically on mid-market renting. Is there an appetite within the more homes division for funding those opportunities? Because the signals we're getting clearly from the local RSLs, and we got it at the briefings we had from the RSLs, they're concerned about building new properties going forward. They see their priority being investing in their existing stock going forward and not necessarily building significant numbers of new housing. So if we're talking about mid-market rented housing being built to meet a particular need, are the more homes division interested in providing obviously subsidy towards that?
Well, Martin, we're at this point to see and Colin's comments.
Right. So first off on the sort of who's this for? Mid-market rent is something that really we don't have available in Inverclyde. So we have, I suppose, we don't have a good evidence base about demand, but we do have sort of qualitative evidence rather than quantitative evidence that there is unmet demand. Now, until there is some mid-market rent accommodation built in Inverclyde, we won't really be able to test the data. But it does suggest that people who don't qualify for social housing maybe can't afford to buy a house outright, are maybe being displaced out of Inverclyde, and that's not something we want to happen. In terms of the appetite of more homes, we've been in discussion with more homes about a number of developments, and generally they do have an appetite to look at mid-market rents. They also have an appetite to look at shared ownership options and various other options. So yes, in detail though, we would have to go to them with a kind of proposal to actually find out what their appetite is on the ground. But yes, they have been open to these things in discussions.
Yeah, I think it's been a good discussion with respect to the mid-market rents, but I think just touching upon the houses to buy, I think is probably something we are missing, and it's something anecdotally I noticed in conversations that a lot, some saying, oh, they've moved up to Dargaville, or they've moved up. So it's maybe not necessarily the fact is that they could afford to live in Inverclyde, but it's because the housing availability in Dargaville, there's a lot of people moving up there. I'm just wondering if officers have any better handle on respect to the drag that is, or the pull that's having out of Inverclyde, because it's a large scale development, very close by, so people can keep their family links, etc. But they've got a house and they're maybe close to Glasgow. How much is there rather than anecdotal, is there actually any quantifiable data about how much that is having an impact on housing in Inverclyde?
Martin?
The short answer, I'm afraid, is no. We don't actually have quantitative data, and there's an issue about how we would go about getting that. Most of the data we have is, as you say, it's anecdotal. It's family members, etc., moving up. There does seem to be a feeling that this is missing, but yes, we would probably need to do a bit more analysis to find out the level of outward migration to the likes of Dargaville. It certainly does seem to be a genuine issue, though.
Okay, can we do recommendations to report? Okay, item number 8 is the Westwood Hall Street regeneration options report. Edith.
Thanks, Convener. The report presents the options and recommendation for progression of the Westwood Hall Street regeneration project. The background within the report covers the history of the project, including the engagement with Sustrans over a number of years, and the most recent engagement where it was confirmed that Transport Scotland would no longer be in a position to make multi-year funding awards. Officers have continued to engage positively with Sustrans, which has resulted in the response which is included as Appendix A. The recommendation being presented for approval in option 1 involves phasing the works to achieve the fundamentals of the original schemes with the design revisions summarised in section 4.1. This will allow the phase 1 work to be progressed and completed along the full length of Westwood Hall Street in anticipation of a second phase following on seamlessly should the 2023-24 Sustrans allocation be confirmed in due course. The report highlights the various risks involved and the mitigations in sections 4.8 and 4.9. I would ask that the committee approve the recommendations, and myself and other officers present who contribute to the report are happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Jim?
Yeah, thanks. I'm delighted to see this report. It's been a long time in coming. And I think, firstly, it would be remiss me not to thank the officers for all the hard work they've done. I don't know if Gordon Leach was on the call, but Gordon and his team especially have worked tirelessly. And I know dealing with Sustrans has not been easy, in all honesty. I look back at the committee's involvement and my own involvement in this, and it probably dates back to 2016 to 2017. And the involvement of Sustrans probably kicks in about 2018. And the reason we wanted Sustrans in as a local authority, we're wanting a bigger bang for the buck. So when we had the carrot of Sustrans there, we accepted the carrot of Sustrans. And perhaps in hindsight's always a great thing. Perhaps in hindsight, we could have just went with option A to begin with. But as a committee, we decided, no, we were wanting the fuller.
Under your guidance.
Under my guidance.
The one unanimous.
We were wanting the fuller picture done. Now, of course, from that, what you actually had from that, it's a number of things. Of course, we had the pandemic, we had the, when everything grind to halt, every single thing started to get dearer and dearer. We had then Sustrans, in my view, changing their mind or changing the goalposts a number of times. But eventually we've got to where we are today. Now, where we are today is not a panacea because we've not got guaranteed funding for the full project. What we've got is we've got funding in order that we can actually start the project in West Hall Street, in the hope that Sustrans will honour the rest of the funding that's going to come along after that. For me, as a committee, I think we've got to get this started. I think West Hall Street has been crying out for years. As I said in an earlier paper, I know it's not a wand and a magic wand. I know it doesn't automatically fill the shops with new owners. But what it does do, it does give that streetscape a badly needed refresh. And it makes West Hall Street a more welcoming place. It gives us a high street back. It gives us that one single route that people can easily walk from one side of it to another. And I think for us, my committee, it doesn't change that much from what we actually agreed in 2018. So for us, I think we should thank the officers as I have done, and hopefully we should all agree unanimously to press ahead with this. So thanks, Convener.
Yeah, thanks very much. So I'm happy to associate myself with what Jim has commented on. Yeah, you're right, there was an alternative that we chose not to take, but that's passed on. So the recommendations that are before us, I'm happy to support. The question to officers are, so the 24-25 Sustrans money of just short of 3 million, if that doesn't come in and the project then ends, what would West Hall Street look like?
Yeah, through you, Convener, I'll attempt to answer, and then maybe Stephen can get anything I miss. The intention of phasing it in the way it's been proposed means that you will end up with a fully resurfaced footways on both sides. The whole length will be one way, as in the next part of the agenda. and the lighting will be addressed in the footways. And I think we're also trying to attempt to put some of the street furniture in the phase one as well. So by doing it this way, you do get a significant improvement, and you do have a finished project and a joined up end product, albeit not addressing the actual roads and the kind of parking areas, which would be the phase two element. But we hope obviously that will happen if we get the Sustrans second phase of funding.
Yeah, so we have a usable street, we have some bits missing, I don't know, some trees, I'm hoping that we've got trees missing, but that would be maybe for clarity later. Some street furniture, but not all, and the cycle lane wouldn't be in place. Is that phase one?
Yeah. That's correct. That's a fair summary, yeah.
Thank you. Comment?
Then did you have to do that line about the cycle lane?
I'm always staying back, so.
Yeah, I think it's very good that we obviously would have consensus on this important part of regeneration in West Buckall Street, which, as things go on and looking at housing strategy, we've just been looking at, that will become one of the major, will become the major sort of shopping area of the town. So it's good to see that sort of putting that what they call improvement in place to take account of other changes going to be happening. Obviously, I just want to just confirm, with respect to now looking at nitty-gritty, etc., this is going to be obviously a major bit of works on this road. There's existing shops already there. How are we going to manage the construction phase? What's the communication strategy? If we move to that point, how do we ensure that we minimise this disruption to the existing shops as we should do this much needed investment?
Yeah, through you, convener. Subject to obviously approval today, and then going through policy. Sorry, I didn't go through P&L this one. The intention is to letter every business premise and give them a detailed programme of the works going forward. Now, recognising the risks within the report in terms of we need to progress as much of this as possible in the current financial year, it is not possible to stop over the Christmas period, and that has to be communicated to all the kind of business premises. Although the recent work in Kilmacombe has indicated how this kind of project, very similar in this phase, can be done with very minimal disruption to the actual business premises. It's only when they're actually carrying out the physical work at each business entrance is there actually a kind of disruption to service. They manage to continue access to all of those premises during that work that happens in Kilmacombe, and it'd be a similar approach in this phase of work. Stephen, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, or if that kind of covers the response.
Thanks, Eddie. No, I think that covers that in total. We're going to come up with a robust programme with our contractor and consultants to deliver this, and take the traders on board as well as we go forward. As we say, we do it in sections, and we try and keep disruption to minimal, and the business is open throughout.
Okay, sure.
Obviously this paper's been in the public domain for some time, and the Green Town Centre Regeneration Forum, Councillor Cockerill raised the matter. Unfortunately, the timing between when the Town Centre Regeneration Forum took place in this committee meeting was just slightly askew, but there were traders there, and we gave an undertaking to the traders that communication was key, and there was an acceptance, I think, the members should go back. That is that meeting yesterday in respect of the works going ahead, the importance of the works, and also the fact that we would try and mitigate as much as possible, but because of the timescales, we couldn't stop over Christmas.
Thanks, Convener. When Eddie referred to Stephen to want to share experiences at Kilmacombe, I felt he was. So if any board members want to share my experience of Kilmacombe, then have a word with me. But this is a pragmatic solution to a difficult problem.
How did you get them paved in gold?
Well, talked from outside the meeting. I think that's actually what we're planning to do with Greenock as well. We've got some left over from Kilmacombe, so we'll sell you them. This is a pragmatic solution, right? And it's important we get on with this project. But I know my colleague was a wee bit critical of Sustrans, but I think we've got to remember that Sustrans is managing this funding on behalf of the government, and it's actually Transport Scotland who are saying Sustrans can't commit to multi-year funding deals. And that's clearly a direct instruction from the Scottish Government, because we know the Scottish Government's funding is under severe pressure as well. So I think it is important if we want the second phase to go ahead, that we do actually make representations to the Government and stress the importance of this project. And indeed, I'm sure if we make representations to a local MSP, he'll be more than happy to make representations to the Government as well. But the public finances are under severe pressure, and I think if we really want phase two, we need to basically try and lobby as hard as we can to ensure that funding is secured.
Okay, McLean.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 9 is the West Hall Street proposed roads order for the court of decision on that. Eric.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. The report covers the proposed roads orders in connection with the Westwood Hall Street project and the recommendations of the independent reporter. I would ask that the committee approve the recommendation.
Okay.
You have to agree with the recommendations, but just for a matter of process, can I ask, does the maintained objector receive a copy of this reporter's report? Or is it a public paper that I'm assuming it's that she has to go and find?
Stephen, I don't know if you know the answer to that.
I'm not sure the answer to that as well, but I'm pretty, I would surmise that yes, the objector would receive a full copy of the reporter's decision and outcome.
Thank you.
That's something check.
If not, I'm happy to pass it to her, but with a appropriate.
It's just a question. I probably should know the answer to this question, but I'm getting on in years. Can somebody remind me why we used a reporter in this case and never heard it at committee?
We can make it as diplomatic as possible.
Basic practice.
All right.
Okay, make your recommendation.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, the active travel strategy cycling infrastructure project priority list. Eric.
Thanks, Convener. The report seeks approval to progress the development of an integrated active travel network in alignment with the approved active travel strategy based on the prioritised list of projects included as Appendix 1. Funding support continues to be made available through Sustrans and Cycling, Walking and Safer Roads, and the agreement of these priorities will allow officers to develop multiple projects and be in a position to maximise the use of these external funding sources. I'd ask that the committee approve the recommendations. Myself and Steve are happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Here.
I think I just keep my light on, but I did actually want to ask a question. I've had some representation recently around the cycle track around Kilmacombe, Warrior Village, which is very, very well used, I have to say. But the representations are around lighting. That did come from a female constituent, and there is no lighting in any section of that cycle path, footpath. And I was asked if I could make representations if for future investment it could be considered lighting at least parts of that, because it is a very well used cycle path, footpath, and it's a good way of people getting out and getting fresh air and whatever. And obviously in the darker months, the winter months, it's dark in the morning and dark in the afternoon. It's very similar to the issues obviously where we're looking at putting lighting into our public parks. Yep. So if something could be looked at that for future investment.
Okay, sure. You can get out over that.
Thank you. I will obviously welcome this report. It's important that we do have a plan in place and prioritise investment at strategic level to ensure that we get a joined up cycle network, active travel network in Limberclyde, and also welcome the high level standard that the officers are working to, cycling by design, and the desire that the cycle paths shall be segregated both from the traffic and also pedestrians, because it's important for safety purposes that is achieved. Obviously, looking at this and looking at the investments to be required to facilitate this would be one of the probably the biggest changes in the physical appearance in some of these routes. This is probably the removal of the trams about 80 years ago. So I'm just thinking, with respect to that, how are we going to monitor this, and also how are we going to get what's the plans for engagement with the councillors on these issues? As Councillor Brooks mentioned earlier on, he was looking to see the drawings in one of his schemes of his ward. But I think probably it's about getting that engagement earlier on to see how we can finesse these things and how we can work to progressing them in an expeditious way. So I'm just wondering if officers could provide comment on that and what the thinking is with respect to that.
Yeah, so you can be it kind of links to the other comments made in terms of consultation, and I know the officers have actually taken forward consultation on some of the kind of larger elements of these schemes, but there's not been a kind of, I suppose, a standard approach to it. It is something we can look at, but bearing in mind that it is, these allocations are annual allocations, and officers need to be in a position to progress things in a relatively quick timescale to make the most use of those allocations. So we'll look at how we consult going forward proportionately, I suppose, in terms of the projects that are put forward and at the right time. And again, I think what might be appropriate for this is at points we can take back an updated committee on percentage progression against each of the prioritised routes.
Okay, any other questions? No, can I agree with
No.
Thank you. Yeah, I was out recently on our cycle packs with one of the local cycle groups that runs out of the Environment hub. It's great to see the work that's went into the packs, and I'm particularly welcome all the projects in this report. I just want to ask you, obviously it's great we're going to invest in these cycle packs going forward, but I just want to make sure that we're investing and maintaining the existing ones as well.
Stephen, I don't know if you want to do that, but I would assume that we are assuming these into our consideration of our limited revenue budgets in terms of continued maintenance.
No, I think some of these paths that we put in fall into our own maintenance regimes basically as we go forward. On some occasions we do get grant money to upgrade sections, and we'll utilise that as we get it as well. But yes, we normally include that within our normal maintenance programmes.
Okay, that's very much. Okay. Item number 11 is the roads and transportation SPT grant funded projects.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. The report presents a summary of the Strathclyde Partnership for Transport grant funded projects completed over the previous 4 financial years, included as Appendix B, and seeks approval to progress the projects included as Appendix A within the current financial year. The report highlights the significant positive investment contribution made through SPT amounting to some £3.3 million over 2019 to 2023, with a further 760,000 in the current financial year. That's the committee approve the recommendations, and myself and Stephen are happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, my colleague Councillor Wilson asked me to remind you that all of this money comes to Inverclyde because of the good work that he does in SPT. That's important. I was just going to ask in terms of the Port Glasgow Park and Ride extension. Port Glasgow Park and Ride was my idea, I have to say. I have to take credit for it. Do we anticipate that we'll receive funding in 24-25 to actually fund the extension? Obviously, this is about funding for the design work, but we anticipate that we should receive funding for the actual extension.
Stephen, you want to take that one?
Yes, thanks, Councillor. Thanks, Convener. Yes, we would look to finish off the design and propose that we go forward into the construction phase and deliver that in full.
Absolutely. Yeah, I welcome that. And I think with the new bridge being put in, etc., I think it makes a far more accessible location, and hopefully by extending it, we'll see greater usage of it as well.
Okay, can we clear that foundation?
Great.
Yeah. Okay, item number 12 is Dunrod Road proposal on the land slip. Amy, and
yep. Yeah, I'll start off, Convener, if that's okay. The report presents options for addressing the Dunrod Road closure following the most recent landslip. The background includes the historical information and previous landslips and the remedial works to the road, including the most recent event and the actions taken to address the safety of the general public. Geotechnical studies and ground investigations have been progressed to inform the options being presented in the report, with a risk map included as an appendix. Just to summarise the report, option 1 addresses the full length of the road in the high and medium risk areas and retains the existing road alignment at the highest capital cost. Option 2 addresses high risk areas of road only in the same alignment, but leaves 300 metres of road in the medium to high risk category, which could fail at any time. Option 3, which is the officer recommended option, involves constructing a new road further up the hill, out with the risk zones, reopening the road to vehicular traffic. Option 4 is similar to option 3, but only suitable for cycling and walking, with a capital cost that's not dissimilar to option 3, but also likely to require a consideration of a turning point and additional cost. And option 5 is do nothing and leave the road closed with provision of a vehicle turning area. Sections 4.2 and 4.3 include commentary in support of the officer recommendation. I would ask the committee to approve the recommendations, which include the funding proposals outlined in section 5, and myself and the other officers present here are happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Ellen. Paul?
Thanks, Peter. I want to thank Officer for bringing this forward. It's been a difficult one to put together, and probably not helped the fact that I've been raising this issue with them since the road closure a number of times now. I'm supportive of option 3 in the report. I think it's the best option, which will reopen the road and try in the long term and do a slip road, especially Dunwood Road. I've certainly since then, it's been closed, had numerous people get in touch with me wanting to see the road reopen, not just from my own board, but from across the Limburg. Of course, there's significant costs involved in option 3. But let's not forget, there's businesses that rely on this road, the Gearcut Visitor Centre, which is an asset for people and one of our key tourism draws. And we're already know from the park rangers that the visitor numbers at the centre has dropped since the road closure. And I know some people might say, let's keep it closed and do nothing, wait for more prosperous times, but the reality is local government partnership settlements from the Scottish Government will leak for years to come. And I think waiting longer is only going to see the cost of this project go up. And the report even notes, well, no large road right now can handle the traffic to the centre long term. It's going to require significant investment to remain in use. So my belief is option 3 is the right one to make, and I hope that committee will support that.
Good, Paul, thank you. Good.
Yeah, thanks, Gavin. I'm happy to support option 3. I think it is the best option, understanding the circumstances we are financially, but when we look at the industries within the area, I think it's right to do that. My question to officer is, and I'm no civil engineer, it says the weight limit, talking about weight limit on option 3, it might be 7 tonnes. So it might be, I don't understand how we can actually get to a state. Is it going to be improved up to 7 tonnes? How does a civil engineer write maybe in the report? I'll ask the question.
You want to come back to that?
On the basis that I'm not an engineer either, I think I'll ask maybe Stephen or Stephen Stewart to comment on that one. Yep.
I think I could come in on that one. I think basically the road deterioration at the moment, at slippage, may have been because or may have been caused by larger vehicles on that surface for a while, and going forward as we put in the new surface and the improved access, it may be an option to consider reducing access down to about 7.5 tonne, 7 tonne, sorry, just to preserve the life of the road, that we don't have heavy vehicles utilising that access.
Okay, now I was aware of a previous answer that says that as we develop our roads within the we can't put restrictions, or we shouldn't put restrictions on it. So I'm assuming that is acceptable to put the 7 tonne restriction on that road.
It would be under consideration. It would have to be put forward as a consideration and agreed as well. Yes.
Okay. James.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, I would also support option 3. Having dealt with and been up to visit the owner of Argowan Fishery on a number of occasions this year, it's clear to see the impact that the road closure is having, not only on his business, other businesses up there, people who live there, people who come in to visit Inverclyde. And for any member on this committee or out with this committee who doesn't maybe support option 3 or any replacement or upgrade of the road, I would urge them to go and visit Mr. Kirkpatrick up there, go and look, try and travel there, try and get there yourself and try and see what it takes to get there. And Dunrod, you'll then see how vital Dunrod Road is to be replaced. I mean, Inverclyde Council themselves refer to Cornellees and the Visitor Centre as the jewel in the crown of Inverclyde. So it's very important, I think, that we consider option 3 as a viable option. But it's just a final point. I would like to just thank Mr. Jameson, who's been very diligent and very supportive, not only coming along to visit Argown Fishery with me, but on a number of occasions by himself, and just so that he can provide support to the people up there as well. So thanks a lot for that, Stuart.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to be devil's advocate for a moment and just say £1.5 million, an awful lot of money for a small stretch of roads. Now, quite clearly, it's something we should be doing, right? So let's be clear, £1.5 million from the council. If you actually think in previous report in West Blackhall Street, the council's commitment at West Blackhall Street is virtually £1.5 million as well. So let's try to put that in perspective. Now, as most of you know, I'm a regular walker of the cut, and I can see exactly what's happening, and I can testify to the footfall declining markedly. In fact, I didn't even get my bacon roll on Sunday morning because the wee cafe was shut, so that was a sin. So I just want to make sure that we are aware that we are, as a council, spending £2 million on this, and the benefit is, it's the right thing to do, but the benefit is not fantastic. It's supporting one business. It's supporting our visitor centre. Cornellees is the lungs of Inverclyde. But I think it is important to say in these cash-strapped times that we're in, for a council of our size to spend £2 million, £1.5 million on a small stretch of road is really quite a lot of money for a small council of our size. And I just think it's right for us as a committee to take cognizance of that. So yes, I'm supportive of it, but I do recognise that it's an awful lot of money for a very small part of a road.
Yeah, just in case anybody's a bit confused, the Labour Group fully supports the recommendations. He was just playing devil's advocate, was always doing. I just think say to Councillor Daisley, I'm sure Councillor McVeigh is either watching this video or will watch the video playback live, and sure he'll hear that point. I mean, this is a difficult situation we're in. We'd ideally not want to have to spend £2 million in this road at any time, never mind now, but clearly given the history outlined in the report, this is, I've said to a few people, this is our mini rest and be thankful. And the reality is that if we go with any other options other than option 3 or option 5, we potentially leave ourselves open to same problems happen again in the future. There's no guarantee option 3 that we won't have problems in the future, but based on the advice from officers and the geography of the site, it's most likely to provide a long-term solution. I simply don't believe that doing nothing is an option, and I agree wholeheartedly with my colleague, Councillor Cassidy, that the costs will only go up for this, and the nirvana where the council is going to be washing itself in cash has not happened in my 20-odd years as a councillor. There clearly has been a lot of representations around this from the local community. Don't forget, it is a route in and out of Inverkip as well. It's not just a route up to Cornellees. And there may not be many businesses, but I think there's a farm that's affected by it as well as a fishery as well. And the farmer has generously offered us land to construct this new road on. So I think we need to get on and do it. And obviously, it is going to get referred to Policy and Resources Committee, and I chair Policy and Resources Committee. But one of the reasons why we set aside a £4 million capital contingency in the budget last year, or earlier this year, was for projects like this. This project was in mind at the time that contingency was set aside. So I do fully support the recommendations, and we need to go on and do this work as soon as we can and get the road reopened.
Thank you. I think the comments about the importance of this road for Environment long term, we can't take over the running of our bit of the park, the Clymutual Park, and then effectively close one of the main assets. So it's important we do that, but it's also important to set the scene for how we actually then develop and invest in that area, because it's important. People say it's the lungs of Inverclyde. It's very important. It's also a way of getting people into Inverclyde as part of that draw. It's important. We need to have these facilities. If the road wasn't here, we wouldn't be suggesting to build it. But if the road is there, it's something we need to maintain our road assets. But that being said, there's other options we can do to look perhaps to maximise Cornelius Bridge. And of course, I think there's good opportunities we can do in the Gaelic side as well to actually maximise the opportunities of getting people up to that part of the world. So I'm fully supportive, and the ST group is fully supportive of this proposal. I just want to come back on just touch upon when the comments made that 7.5 tonne weight limit. I'm not going to get into technical issues, don't worry about it. It's not my forte. But I was just wondering, in response to the officer, they said that the there may have been damage caused by the excessive weight of vehicles. I'm just wondering, is there any recourse from us as a council due to the fact that the vehicles have actually damaged the actual road? Is there any way that we can actually get the compensation from the vehicles that have possibly damaged the road?
Stephen's comment was that it could have been a contributory factor, with no way of proving that it was a contributory factor. So no, there isn't any recourse to the this.
Okay. Any recommendations? At3pm is a proposed part regulation order. Environment Council disabled person traffic places on street. Can we agree?
Special meeting of the council as opposed to a reporter. Yes, that would be.
Yes.
Item 2.18 is a choice.
Can we agree? We'll do that without going to the reporter. Yeah.
Without
using the reporter.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay, item 14 is elected members' objection to roads and traffic orders.
Thank you, convener. Afternoon, members. So yeah, as it said, you may recall this is on the back of a decision of the committee back in March that we take this away, look at custom and practice, report to the SLF, which we've done, and then bring a report back here. Briefly, having done so, from an officer perspective, we believe that the current practice is appropriate and doesn't need any change. We have, however, just made a comment that any such objections, they don't always necessitate a need for a reporter to be appointed, something Councillor McCabe just touched upon earlier, although in some instances it might still be appropriate. Very happy to take any questions.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think the principal concern was around the cost of the report, to be perfectly honest, and I'm quite clear that we don't need to appoint a report in these circumstances, and I need to be convinced there need to be really strong reasons put forward by officers as to why we should appoint a reporter. We always have to deal with that on a case-to-case basis, but given the clarity that we don't need to appoint a reporter, I'm content with what's in the report.
Okay.
Yeah, I suppose one of the contentions whenever these came up is you didn't actually know who the elected member was. Right? It was an anonymous elected member, and no matter how much we tried, we couldn't seem to find who that elected member was. So I don't know if Ian wants to have the opportunity to name the last 10 objections I'd like this and name the elected member who actually put forward the objection. But in all seriousness, whenever we've been at this, we've been thinking, who's the elected member? And it's been like in a jury room where we're like, oh, well, it wasn't me, and it wasn't me, and it wasn't me. So I don't know if there is that proviso that if that comes up again, we actually put the elected member's name in it, just for clarity, and so we actually know who we're talking about.
Is there a problem with doing that, Ian?
No, I don't think so, because everyone's an elected representative, and if that would be the wish of the committee, no, I think that's fine. I wouldn't imagine that the fact their name is going to be published in a paper would prevent them from making an objection that they wouldn't otherwise. So no, I don't see a problem with that. We would just make that clear to the elected member at the time.
Okay. And the right one on that?
Well, certainly the elected member, was quite vociferous in making public his objection.
Yeah, well, I was just going to, I don't know if it's the same elected member we're referring to, but the particular elected member did publicly state at Kilmacombe Community Council on Monday night that he was an objector to a traffic regulation order in Kilmacombe. So he's quite happy for his name to be in the public domain. And I think it's important actually that elected members do know, because we're talking about a fellow elected member and we're all operate within groups within here, and you may feel a conflict of interest if it's one of your colleagues who's actually the objector. So I think it's pretty critical that we do know who the objectors are, in my view.
Okay. So can we agree recommendation and agree that we're going to name and shame?
Did you say shame?
Right, if you're going to work that accordingly. Right, okay, thank you very much.
Is that applied rights?
Sorry.
I was just going to say, I'm really glad we've used the he, him, his pronoun a couple of times there, so at least I know always to me.
Right, okay, so item 15 is your recycling centre. Penny.
Thank you, convener. This is a report for noting March 2020 committee agreed to provide recycling only civic community facilities in Gourock, and a saving was subsequently identified and taken. Due to obviously COVID, a number of other factors, the facility has remained open as residual and recycling facility. So in order to meet the remit, it's proposed that this change will take effect late September or early October of this year. Officers will prepare a short communication strategy, notify elected members and service users accordingly. I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions? One.
Yeah, thanks. So obviously I've noted, the report noted that the decision was taken in March 2020, which is something I didn't know, so thanks for pointing that out as I'm slowly taking my rubbish to recycling. So can I just clarify how much of landfill is Gourock receiving just now? So I'm just trying to understand what the impact will be, and my concern is the amount of time, if we're talking about only a month to get that communication out to there. So if there's a significant amount of landfill going there, then clearly informing people of that in advance, and that it is 4 weeks enough time to get that out and people to change their habits.
Sorry, through you can do that. The majority of the skips there are recycling skips. We only have 2 to 3 rotated residual skips. One of the problems we also have is when the residual skips are full, we have to close the site. So it'll allow us to have more capacity. To answer your question, the facilities that we provide for residual are available to you in your own household. There's not an awful lot of material regardless that we can't take, and we will look to increase and expand the opportunities to take material there. But as I say, the decision was taken in 2020, so we anticipate there will be a small impact initially as people get used to it, but thereafter it should improve.
So I think my point is a month enough for the communication. That's all, so it's known as recycle and also for a landfill but is a month enough for the communication to go out and to get that embedded in the community? That's probably my question.
We feel it is enough, but we've given ourselves a short leeway. Late September, early October could be up to the first week, into the first week in October. So we could maybe have 5 to 6 weeks. Staff are already preparing the documents.
Okay.
So like the answer is no then?
No. Answer. I mean, that's 5 minutes ago.
4 weeks, that's it. But yeah, so the communication is to go out pretty quick. I think that's the point if it's.
Okay, can we agree with recommendation? Okay, item number 16 is the Nature Restoration Fund proposed projects. Kevin, you're there.
Thank you, Convener, through you. And the Council have engaged with the Green Action Trust to develop a number of projects aligned to, first of all, the Council's net zero strategy and also funding through the Scottish Government's Nature Restoration Fund. The attached appendices in the report detail the projects, and they are a mix of site deliverable projects, design and development projects, and surveys and reports, which will be anticipated to lead to shovel-ready style projects next year. Having identified these ready-to-go projects will allow us thereafter to bid into future Nature Restoration Fund aims, and that will allow us therefore to get additional funding to support more work, which will be brought to committee. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, I welcome the report and I welcome the proposals, but we seem to be targeting land and the ownership of the council. So I'm just wondering if we're able to basically expand that to utilise land owned by others who would enter into sort of partnership with us. I mean, for example, RSLs locally can have a significant sort of land holding in different places. And I certainly know that the Green Action Trust was gifted a bit of land in Kilmacombe fairly recently that potentially could be utilised for these type of projects as well. So it's just to get an understanding of we're able to potentially look at partnership projects as well.
Apologies. So can I go through you, Convener? Yeah, that will be the eventual plan. We have discussed that the land ownership in Inverclyde is spread across several large land users. So projects going forward, we have invited some landlords previously to discuss, and we would look to expand on that.
Okay, that's helpful.
So,
thanks, Convener. I just also welcome this report. I think it's another really good example of us being able to lever in funding from elsewhere, money that's available through other agencies, other organisations that help us with the aspirations that we have. We've talked about such times and money coming in for the project in Westport Hall Street. We've talked about money coming in from other aspects of the Scottish Government. This is and it's something that we have said a lot is building our capacity not only with our own resources but with other funding that's available, and so it is great to see an example of this, and in the way that we've said that we feel we're not funding a catalyst for bigger things like that being the starting point. I think we would say the same in terms of this funding, in terms of levering in the external support to look at our net zero aspirations as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, I'm challenged always by trees in communities because my inbox always fills up with the management of trees, whether it's road trees or obviously trees just throughout Inverclyde. And only today, Sanctuary Homes I've been asked to contact Sanctuary Homes by failure for them to maintain trees and interfering with road lights on one of our roads, but nothing seems to happen. So if we're planting all these trees, it's all part of the process, it's part of the strategy, somebody else is funding it, great. But how do we maintain them, how do we look after them, and how do they actually ensure that we don't actually have challenges going forward when the trees are ultimately being put in the wrong place?
Yeah.
Oh, my apologies, my internet shut there. I couldn't hear. Was that a question? Sorry.
Okay, yeah, trees put in the wrong place, so there's always a challenge for maintaining trees, and obviously council got hit with the bills, and council got hit with the frustration of constituents. So, how do we know that we've got the right projects that going forward will have less hassle?
We are working with Green Action Trust, who are experts in the field, and the Clyde Climate Forest. We're also looking to put trees in areas where they would form woodland rather than just adjacent to property. So our anticipation is that the trees are in the best area they can possibly go in, given the locations we have available. We wouldn't deliberately try and put them somewhere, obviously, that they weren't going to be the right type of thing, but we are developing plans and projects based on best advice from the experts.
Thanks, Convener.
John?
Thank you, Convener. The question I was really going to look at, it was more assurances rather than a question, and I was near that it's really been responded to. It was really just to look at appendix number 2, and it was the concern that I really had there was the planting on roads, and it was just to give assurances that any trees that were planted were not of a sufficient size whereby the roots would actually cause uneven surfaces on the road or footway where they could cause a trip hazard. But the responses that I have actually received, I think actually tends to answer that question. Thank you.
Okay, John. Stephen?
Sorry, Convener, I forgot.
Okay. Can I agree recommended?
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Okay, 17 is a protocol and criteria for planning board and local review body site visits. Stuart, for us.
This, it may come as a surprise to members that we don't actually have protocols for planning board and site visits, and this is just providing best practice, so we can do it.
Agreed.
Can agree. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Item 18 is the clean track master plan. Martin, you tell us.
Yes, thank you, Convener. This is really for members' information to apprise them of progress on the new Clune Park Master Plan. Members will recall that there was a Clune Park Master Plan brought to committee in 2018. That master plan effectively failed on the basis of affordability and deliverability. So in developing these initial proposals, we have then gone to More Homes and other partners to discuss how they could be developed further. It's our intention to bring a finalised master plan to committee in November, and we'll hold an all members briefing before we do so that members can actually ask questions on the finalised master plan. Finally, I would observe that in Appendix 1, in Phase 1, in Option 1, you'll see that the outline of the school was included, and there was an intention to obviously look at the feasibility of facade retention. Given the events of this week, we are still not clear whether that will be deliverable or not. Obviously, it has become less likely than it was previously, but we don't know the final outcome of the stability of the school. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, man. On that, we got on the update on the school map.
So I'll maybe pass over to Eddie, as he's been involved in the discussions about the school.
Okay. Eddie.
Sorry, thanks for you, Convener. In terms of the current position, we have had an engineer inspect the school and have some advice in terms of immediate priority works to address the kind of stability of the structure and the safety of the surrounding environment. So there was also a meeting on site today with the emergency demolition contractor who we've engaged through an Excel framework to discuss the scope of works required. And there's been engagement with Historic Environment Scotland through the planning service in terms of their requirements and considerations in terms of minimal work being done only to address safety concerns. So nothing's been done at present, but it will be required in the very near future, and we're looking at what a programme would look like, potentially starting within the next few days and subject to further engagement with these bodies.
All members will be aware that I issued an email yesterday and changed following the conversations that have taken place, and so that email still stands.
Okay, that's right. Talking about a tangent there. So any questions on the master plan? Sorry, Chris. I think Chris was first. You first, Chris. Okay, Stephen.
See, I read it there to me. Okay, right. You've lost my train of thought.
Just like to have last word.
All right, I've noticed that about you. It was around the idea that was being floated by the fire service of the relocation of Port Glasgow fire station to potentially, obviously, allow further expansion of the Ferguson shipyard. And certainly, Mr. McGarry had floated the idea of potentially that facility located at Clun Park, along with a joint facility potentially with the police, linking back to an earlier discussion that we had. It's just to see whether that sort of discussion has been looked at in the context of the Clun Park master plan or not.
Sure.
So through you, convener, at the moment we have been looking to deliver a housing-led option. I am aware that has been raised previously by Mr. McCary. I think we would need something a bit more concrete to actually really go on if we were to include anything like that in any proposals. And I think there are so many varying options that I think they're looking at that I don't know that it really fits in the timescales for this. This is required for us to actually take forward the development of Clun Park, and waiting for a concrete proposal on a possible fire station would be quite difficult.
Okay, that's helpful.
Okay, Chris.
Oh, thank you, Convener. Just with respect to the comments officers about the final master plan being presented to councillors, I'm just wondering whether or not what opportunities that councillors have to actually engage in that process, because obviously looking at it, there's two options presented here. Initial options, I think described that. So I'm just wondering, as an opportunity for us as councillors to engage with the process and helping part of the development of the master plan.
So if you have comments on these drawings, I'm more than happy to pass those on to our consultants. But we're working to relatively tight timescales, and I suppose it's probably worth bearing in mind that the master plan will give us an outline of what might be achieved in Clun Park. There are other stages to actually getting there, which involve things like, obviously, involve the completion of the acquisitions, demolition, the appointment of a partner RSL. So even though we have a final master plan, it's unlikely to be exactly what will be constructed. There will be changes through time, I suspect. So, but anything that you have that you want to actually feed back, I'm happy to do so now.
Thank you. I'll take that opportunity.
Yeah, thanks very much. Note my declaration for item 7. Martin did say about working with that RSL at this stage. My question would go to be: is RSL involved at this stage? Or any RSL involved at this stage as we're developing the 2 master plans?
So we have shared the master plans with a number of RSLs who had actually expressed a potential interest in being partners. I haven't had any comments back as yet. I suspect that probably until they are actually appointed as partners, the likelihood of them making detailed comments is probably unlikely. But we're working more with more homes to ensure that anything proposed is deliverable by AN RSL. So I think if we do that, then we'll get to the right place.
Okay, thanks, Convener.
Okay,
thanks, Convener. My question's a bit of a reaction question. Just if we're calling it a master plan for Clun Park, then surely it should be the sort of widest possible range of options that are included in it, including things like the the joint location for a fire station and police station. Now, if it's a genuine master plan, it shouldn't just be about the housing. I'm not trying to be contentious with that, just kind of, if it's, you know, if it's housing led, that's fair enough, but a master plan should surely do what it says now. Tim?
Sure. We'll have to engage with Scottish Fire and Rescue to see if there is any opportunity, but as Mr. McNabb has highlighted, it's very much been based on housing or recognising that the production of this master plan is an iteration process that we're undertaking, going towards the potential production of a CPO. And in order for us to be able to deliver a CPO, we need to have planning permission in principle, at least if not planning permission, as well as funding and a partner going forward. So our Martin's focus has been very much on housing-led regeneration because that's the direction that has been given. But recognising the comments that you and Councillor McCabe have raised with regards to Scottish Fire and Rescue, we'll see if there is an opportunity for inclusion within it.
Okay.
Yeah, but just to add to that, but the imperative from my perspective is to progress the plan for Clone Park, and we wouldn't want to see it delayed if we're having months and months, if not years, of discussion with other partners who've not got any funding for a development.
Through you convener, we wouldn't do anything from the fence frames, which was
okay. Yeah. Just the point about RSLs, there is an RSL that has an ownership interest in the area anyway, so I'm sure that they must be involved in the plan. They may not wish to be the developing association area, but they've got an interest in the fact that they've got an ownership interest.
Through you convener, and they have been engaged with work.
Okay. Okay, can we agree that? Agreed. Okay. Item 19 is one that we've updated before, which is the health and private. We've got number 20, which is routine decisions and items for noting. Item 20, the structural reform in Scotland. Bill. Yeah, anything you want to? Agreed. Okay. So, we agree?
Okay. Have you missed 19? I was respecting the fact that we didn't need to have the report introduced. But my question is, there's a number of areas in the report, paragraphs 4.5, 4.8 and 4.9, where the officer who wrote the report, which is Ken, seems a bit sceptical about the financial consequences of the personnel and
performance school site in there with a report from an officer who went to the said school with a strong sleep is not lost on me. For clarity, convener, it's not Nordic Place that we're proposing, it's Narvik Place. It's the Battle of Narvik.
Why does that want to come?
It's the Battle of Narvik. The Battle of Narvik. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, can we
like I see the recommendation? Okay. 22, corporate traffic management public report. In the okay, the list items that are held in private. Those are still documented in the